Salutations, Utopians. So I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of college sports and the prime effect. Right now, the hottest sports story right now, headline, is Colorado Buffalo and Coach Prime's influence on the game and resurgence and revitalization of the college football scene. Can't help but reflect on my introduction into college football around 98-99 when Lloyd Carr was the head coach of Michigan University. And around that time, that was the John Navarre, Anthony Thomas, David Terrell, Marquise Walker ball club. They had John Jensen at left tackle, Pro Bowler in the NFL years later, and left guard Steve Hutchinson, all pro for Seattle, most notably on that offensive line. And Butkus was there, Jeff Backus was there as well. With that being said, when I grew up watching the game, it was institution-led. No one was bigger than the program, and running the ball was the antidote for victory. And some things have changed to get where the game is today. The first time, theoretically, I think what began the ripple effect was the conference shifting. And the first one happened in 96 with the Southwest Conference. And then 3 years later, Ed O'Bannon, a college basketball player, brought a lawsuit against the NCAA and EA Sports for exploiting college players and not including them in the pot, so to speak. And 2003, fast forward 7 years later from the first shuffle of a conference, Va Tech in Miami announced they were going from the Big East to the ACC. And that was when the pot really started to, and the light bulb went off. And a very unique dynamic, I believe, that was the pivoting point in college football. Because obviously you want to preserve the game. And college football, unlike college basketball, will always have a certain level of sturdiness to it. Not just because of alums and boosters, but because in order to go to professional, you have to wait 3 years. And there is no other league to rival or wait around and to join. Unlike the NBA, where you had like the Emmanuel Moutier's, Brandon Jennings, LaMelo Ball going overseas and bypassing the G League and the Euro, and then all these leagues international. There's only one NFL. There's only one place to play pigskin. The institutions known as the academic institutions, and then you go directly to the NFL. And that's how it is, and that's for the foreseeable future will always be. And I know there is the next collective bargaining agreement is in 2030. So as of now, it requires that you play college football for 3 years before you can be eligible to go pro. Furthermore, in the college game, which keeps it intriguing, is that one loss your season has an asterisk. So the stakes are really high, and regardless of what your record indicates, there's rivalry games. But when their conference shuffle happened, it became a unique dynamic, preserving the legacy of the game, which began in 1869. And at the same time creating new traditions. And I believe that's when the power shift began, and how today you have a Nick Saban who's signed to almost $100 million deal, give or take. The coaches suddenly shifted the power, and they determined what institution was valid, what institution warranted primetime action, since they were the ones who were going to proactively go door to door and recruit. And then what ended up happening was, with that means now, obviously, it's a hierarchy. So the players got more power. And so the portal started to happen. And I don't want to make it seem like I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but I think it really didn't become a headline and a thing until Angel Reese, National Women's Basketball, College Basketball Champion Angel Reese from LSU, went from Maryland to LSU and won the national championship. And then the NIL deal go hand in hand. So now there's a little bit of power that goes to the players now. And so women's basketball, men's collegiate football, are the direct beneficiaries of the NIL being factored in preserving the legacy of the collegiate sports. College basketball, that's a different discussion for a different day. I want to make myself very clear. I don't want to make it seem like this is just a recent thing. The portal has been used before. Cam Newton went from a JUCO team in Texas to Auburn and won a national title, which is arguably one of the greatest sports stories, regardless of any sport. Professional, collegiate, basketball, football, hockey, whatever. That was one of the most rags to riches story, and I mean that in the utmost respect, that you could ever bear witness. So now you got Deion Sanders, who last year was at a HBCU WAC conference, and him and his son Shiloh, running it up. And I remember when they said he was coaching, I was like, oh cool, Coach Prime staying busy. I remember he was on CBS back in the day. He's always stayed busy, but he went to Jackson State and started to, 3 years, turn that program around. And went to greener pastures. You know what they say, the test before the testimony. Took a lot of heat. Shout out to his son Shiloh, who still walked across the stage and got his degree from Jackson State, JCU. And then he goes to Colorado. And 51 transfers. 3 4-star recruits. 1 5-star in Trav Hunter. Get well soon. I heard about the lacerated liver. The liver, as you all know, is the computer chip to the body. Can't process anything without it. And so that makes the recovery even more difficult. But life gives its most difficult test to its greatest soldiers. And he is a soldier. That guy playing 2 sides of the field, both sides. 2-way player. But what you're witnessing right now is a full circle moment. And I've never seen such a polarizing storyline. I literally feel like a kid now every time I watch it. Shout out to Dave Talks Buffs, because it's truly amazing. You can't talk Colorado football without mentioning him, by the way. I'm sorry, I should have began this TED Talk with a shout out to him. But you have so many storylines within storylines with this Colorado thing. You got the HBCU transfer to Colorado, Division I school. You got Coach Prime, former player, transitioning into his coaching career. How good is he? He's already now, after 1 game against TCU, being referenced and already talking about the pros. That's just, unfortunately, the times we live in. We live in such an abbreviated society. It's always more, what's next? The man has not even been 1 year. He's already answering NFL questions. And then you have the father-son dynamic, which is fascinating. Great time right now as we are trying to as divorce rates are at an all-time high and homes are broken and all these different things. Seeing role models and father-son dynamic is just amazing. It's the most relatable story right now. And then the quarterback head coach dynamic. And I tell you, it's truly remarkable to see their growth cohesively, because first of all, we don't see these type of combinations, and we don't see it simultaneously happening together, the rise simultaneously at the same time. And I don't think people really understand the significance of that game week 2 against Nebraska. Matt Rule is a former NFL coach. He coached on the highest level of the NFL with a very storied franchise who I have the highest respect for, in Carolina Panthers, who have blessed the league with some of the greatest years that it's ever had. And so you see what's going on right now. Him in Nebraska, you see the potential. Yeah, they shot themselves a lot in the foot that game. And guess what? They tripped on themselves a lot. And guess what? That score is not an indication of how much of a battle it was. But Matt Rule was a former NFL coach, is what I'm saying. And he's an offensive-minded coach. And you all know how valuable offensive-minded coaches are right now, the run on them, because of the market that quarterbacks are getting paid right now. We are now at officially $500 million. for a quarterback. $250 million is the base rate, basically. Lamar, Herbert. Those are not base players, but I'm just saying of the elite, the bottom of the elite. Herbert, Burrows. So, an offensive coach is highly heralded. And I'm going to get to it, just how unbelievable that is. Because two of Mel Kiper's top 5 or top 4 pro quarterback collegiate pro prospects are former NFL. Cliff Kingsbury with Caleb Williams, who's at USC, and he's former coach of the Arizona Cardinals. And then you have, and that's not even including, Ewers and Sarkisian, because Sarkisian was the offensive coordinator with Alabama and offensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons. So he's definitely a quarterback whisperer. With that being said, watching the rankings, might as well address it right now. He's got Caleb Williams, and I'm going to match the duo, the company they're in. Caleb Williams, who's been unanimous #1 overall pick since the beginning of the year, for about a year now, and Cliff Kingsbury, former coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Then you have Drake May and Mack Brown. Mack Brown is, I think, either 2 or 3 all-time winningest coach in Texas Longhorn history, one of the most storied institutions, programs. You could even rival them against, they have a richer history than a vast majority of NFL teams. And he's the all-time winningest coach in North Carolina history, which he is now back coaching where it all began. And then third on the list, Shedeur and Prime. It's not only, I'm not going to name any names, but there's plenty of head coach in basketball I can immediately think of more than in football. But you know how difficult it is, father, son, and then trying to simultaneously rise at the same time their careers? We don't see this level of synergy at this point. So, going fourth on the list is Ewers and Sarkisian. That's the company they're in. Either a legacy Diamond Standard coach or former NFL experience in a major capacity in a matter of 2 years. Remember, and that was the big storyline. And the fascinating thing of these first 3 games. First game, TCU. Okay, what are they? Well, they walk that walk and they talk that talk. Went against Nebraska, Matt Rule versus Deion. Okay, Deion's a real NFL coach. After week 1's victory, they were like, oh, Deion can win games. Can he coach on the NFL? He was such a smashing success post-conference. They're asking him about NFL. He's already having to dispel NFL rumors. And he did the best he could by saying, hey, those guys make too much money to listen to me, being as humble, as gracious as possible, which is amazing of Prime, to be so gracious. And so then week 2, Nebraska, the showdown. And then Shedeur, Nebraska runs a 3-3-5. That's a sub package. Most quarterbacks struggle running base packages, 4-3, 3-4, cover 2. They're running a 3-3-4 as their primary. And people are like, oh, well, he's kind of, what do you expect? There was a point, a 3rd and 6 in the second quarter around the 10-minute mark. His patience in the pocket, his comfort. It's like, it's Brady-like. If it's in that realm, that sounds crazy. I won't put that on him. But his posture, his poise in the pocket, literally, the man is like right here, and he's about to just completely plummet him, make him part of the turf, and he just elusive and gets the ball out. Didn't get smacked at all. And mind you, they're starting 2 very raw offensive tackles. I think one of them 6'10". He's really designed to play basketball. And I think the other one's 6'8". So I'm just sitting here watching this whole thing unravel. And then Shedeur. We talked about Prime and Raul, and then Shedeur in the 3-3-5. Then they go next week, march down to Colorado, and it had kind of the same essence of what TCU game was. And they handled business there again. Overtime, when they were close to defeat, they rose to their feet, to quote the great Dr. Dre in the Still DRE verse, one of my favorite lines in hip-hop. It really looked like they were done for and out the water. And they came marching back 98-yard drive. and win it in overtime. And so this week they just announced they're going to sign Warren Sapp. And if anyone knows, he's one of the greatest interior pass rushing. He's arguably the greatest interior pass rusher in a lot of people's books. And the thing is, he's considered undersized. I call him the Mike Tyson of tackles, because Tyson was 5'11" as a heavyweight. Sapp is like 6'2", 300. And when his posture, where he starts it would bring him down to about 5'11". But his hands were violent, and he was a technique master. He could have had in his previous life been a sumo wrestler champion. And he had personality on top of that, and charisma. Only few defensive players really got the same kind of camera time that a quarterback would get. And now the big talk in Colorado is, how we're going to pay Prime. Well, if you look at the list, we talked about Nick Saban earlier. The top 5 institutions in terms of pay to their coaches made north of $500 million, just north of $500 million for their programs. Put your Robert Kiyosaki hat on. Good debt versus bad debt. That's a problem you don't mind to pay. Not to mention with Nike wrapping their arms around the program, they're even making custom sneakers for Prime after the foot surgery. They are well involved. When has Nike gotten this, on a collegiate level? They're working on his signature sneaker for him. And, the game values quality quarterbacks. One of his, I was looking for the name right here, but one of his signature sneakers, they remixed it, remade it for his foot after post-surgery. So they're that involved where they're sending out custom shoes. And mind you, when has Nike reached out to a signature athlete that is no longer playing the game like that? You got to be really special. They're watching closely. Nike, we all know, is the diamond standard for American athlete sponsorship. You get promoted by Nike, you made it. Congratulations. I don't have to tell you that. But this is truly remarkable what we're witnessing. The star-studded staff. You can always reach out to Cordell Stewart, a guy who played 3 positions. I don't think people understand the Swiss Army knife players that we're witnessing today. Cordell Patterson, Deebo Samuels. That was Cordell back in the day. He used to spell Neil O'Donnell in the 4th quarter and played in big games. Quarterback, kick returner, running back, and wideout. That's why these guys like Deebo is like, hold on, I want the Swiss Army knife label. Pay me like them wideouts. I don't want to be paid like a running back. That was what the hoopla was about. Well, guess who paved the way? And that's at Colorado at your disposal. Warren Sapp at your disposal. Neon Deion. So guess what? That's another reason to lure the best of the best. You're witnessing it's like, picture you buying a house and realizing you just bought a property that's sitting on an oil mine. That's what you're witnessing right now. This is truly fascinating when I'm telling you. So for me, watching this is a full circle moment, and I'm so glad to be able to be a part of this. Honestly, all my utopians out there, enjoy the ride. I don't know what the future holds. They're going against Oregon. Their defensive coordinator, Kelly, this week, he's known the quarterback at Oregon since he was a child. And so, and he's coached at 3 different schools with his pops. So even though Trav Hunter's down, all is not lost. I expect Wilkerson to be utilized more. He's the second RB2. I know Dylan Edwards is RB1, but Wilkerson is the RB2, and I think he's a little bit heavier, and I think you got to play an old school way, as I alluded to earlier. Slam the ball down their face, control the time of possession, because they run a lot of cross routes, and you want to keep that offense off the game. You don't want to get into a shootout with these guys. You just want to sit up there, keep it low scoring, be physical, take a page out of that Colorado State book. Obviously, I don't condone dirty play. What they did to Travis Hunter is unthinkable, but at the same time, you do want to get a little bit more physical. Watching pro sports, that's just the way it is. Miami Heat have been to 2 finals now in the last couple since 2020, since the bubble. not with all those undrafted players. Why? Because they play old school game. That's why whenever you hear teams talk about, oh, Bulls versus the modern day Warriors with Kevin Durant, who wins, they ask what rules, because there's certain things that logistic majors can't account for when a team puts their hands on your jersey and are playing a little more physical. That's why there is no Warriors without Draymond. Guys, that's why historically teams don't win playing jump shot, but you have Draymond, who's the bootleg LeBron, plays 5 positions out there, and he does the stuff that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. You can never overestimate the value of certain things like physicality and grit and grind, and that's what it's going to have to be. It's going to be the non-box score stuff that's going to push these guys through. Like I mentioned, their tackles are raw, they're big, but they're very raw. So what they're going to have to do, slam these guys, throw them around, wear them down. Even if it's 2 yards and it doesn't account for anything and you go 3 and out, you're slamming these guys over and over. Quick dink and dunk. Shedor's going to have to unlock his inner Brady. He said that 98-yard drive. Well, Brady in big games, he just slice and dice you all the way to the end. They watch you till the end of the cliff and say who's going to blink first and dare you to blink. That's how the Spurs do. They just conservatively walk you down to the very last moment. And this team, with all this national notoriety, if anyone can play that game, it's them. Oregon, yeah, they're used to being on the top, but they're not used to this type of heat. It's like fighting Mayweather. You go in that ring, and yeah, you fought in some big fights in your life, but this is the ultimate, and it looks different. And that's what it is. It's the prime effect. All right, y'all, like and subscribe. All the best.